And welcome back. Here we have our second example of two-step mole conversions. And again, I can't emphasize enough that the rule for two-step mole conversions is always to get moles first. As long as you can get from the beginning unit to moles, you can do pretty much anything you want. So, let's take this example here, and I've brought in a new unit just for kicks. How many liters of ethylene gas, and the formula is given there as C2H4, at STP are there in a container that holds 500.0 grams of ethylene. So, first thing we always do, write out our conversion factors. And we've been doing this since day one when we've been talking about dimensional analysis here, so this should be nothing new. Now, the first conversion factor that we're going to need to use is, well, we start out with grams. So we know to get from grams to moles, to get from a mass to the number of moles of a substance, we will need to know the molar mass of ethylene. So 1 mole is equal to, in this case, 28.06 grams of ethylene. Now, all you would have to do that is to take the mass of carbon and double it, and to take the mass of hydrogen and multiply by 4, and then add those together. So I'm not going to go through that process. You've been through it enough, but you get the idea. Now, the question finally asks us how many liters. So that is the unit we want to end up with. Now, in order to end up with those units, we need to use the concept of the molar volume. And we talked last time about how the 1 mole of any gas, doesn't matter how big or small, occupies the same volume as long as you hold it at conditions of standard temperature and pressure. And that volume, as you'll remember, is 22.4 liters. So we can use that as a conversion factor to solve this problem. Now, the first thing we always do when setting up a dimensional analysis problem is we set up a grid and we start with the value that we're given. In this case, we start with 500.0 grams of ethylene. Now, you may be a little annoyed that we've represented this as 500.0, but that's important, because if we can measure it that precisely, then we need to account for those sig figs in our answer. So, let's get back to the problem. We have 500 grams to start, and the first step is to get moles first. In this case, to get from grams to moles, we need to use the molar mass as a conversion factor. So, right here is going to be step number 1. We're going to use that conversion factor as a ratio in our first box here. Now, on the bottom, we're going to need to have grams, because we need those units to cancel out. So how many grams are in a mole of ethylene? 28.06 grams. Then, on the top of this fraction, on the top of this ratio, we're going to have 1 mole. Generally, on all of these mole conversions, one part of that fraction in each step is going to be 1 mole, because we're comparing those quantities to the amount that we would have in 1 mole. So, if we take it from there, we can see that we don't have the answer we want. We want liters, and we don't have liters. We have moles. So, first, we're going to make sure we cancel out grams so we can keep track of where we're at. And we're going to get back to the next step. Now, the next step should be able to get us from moles to liters. Now, of course, in order for it to cancel out, we need to put 1 mole on the bottom. And I think you've probably figured out by now that we're going to use the molar volume as the other conversion factor. And up here, we're going to put 22.4 liters. So, now we check. We make sure all our units cancel, and moles do cancel, as we can see there. We make sure that we have the units that we want in our final answer, and it looks like we have liters, which is what they asked for in the beginning. So, looks like, as Mr. Sperry said, it's time to plug and chug. So, we take 500.0 and we divide by 28.06. That's step number 1 here. And then, because it's on top of the fraction, we multiply by 22.4. When we get that answer, and this time we're rounding to 4 sig figs because that's what we started with, we get an answer of 399.1 liters of ethylene. Now, as a real-world connection here, if you put a bunch of ethylene together, you make something called polyethylene. Polyethylene is what makes up all the plastic shopping bags you have lying around your house. I know I have hundreds. So my life would be much less rich without the existence of ethylene gas in my life. So next time you say chemistry doesn't mean anything, just look at this example. And hopefully you have a little better idea of how to do two-step mole conversions now. Thanks for watching.